guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing fine. So today I'm going to be showing you the books which I read in the month of August and September. So without further ado, let's begin. So I didn't shoot a September TBR video because I didn't plan a TBR for September and I just went according to my mood. I really wanted to read a lot of books from my bookshelf, and that's why I went in for a book buying ban to stop buying new books. So I decided just to go according to the mood and pick books and read them. So I think September was a very good month for that, and I think I read about 4 books in this month, and I'm really happy and actually content and grateful for it, because you tend to forget a lot of books when you're planning your TBR sometimes, and if you are a mood reader, I think it's very important that you kind of give importance to yourself and go according to the situation or the mood that is happening on your everyday life. So having said that, I'm going to be showing you the books which I read in the month of August first, because I didn't shoot an August wrap-up video and I just wanted to combine August and September together. So if you're new to my channel, please take some time and subscribe my channel, and don't forget to click the bell icon so that you get notified of all of my future uploads. So let's see what I read for August. Okay, for August I read 3 ebooks and 1 physical copy. So let's start with physical copy. So I read this book, actually I was reading this book from July, I think July 2nd week, and I was not able to continue the book because it's a combination of 11 short stories, and I think the 3rd or the 4th chapter was not so intriguing, and I just DNF'd this book. So again I picked this book in the month of August, and I really liked the other stories. So this is a collection of Jeffrey Archer's 11 short mystery stories. So every story will have a twist in the story at the last, and that's why the title is A Twist in the Tale. So I totally liked around 9 stories in the book, and I DNF'd around 2 stories because they were not very intriguing, very predictable, and I kind of liked most of the plots in the book. They were short, but they were very curious and very fast moving. So I really liked the book, and this is my first Jeffrey Archer, and I think I picked the correct book to start up with Jeffrey Archer's work. The second book which I read is a review copy actually from the author, and this is a very cute illustrated children's books. So if you're starting with reading, I would highly suggest you to start up with a children's book, because the language is very easy firstly, and secondly you get to know the characters and the moral of the stories really well, because of the language being so simple. And thirdly, I think there's a lot of illustrations in most of the children's books, so you don't get bored while reading books. So if you are starting with reading, I think children's books and short story collection is also my other suggestion. So this book is The Yuckiest Lunchbox Ever. So I think it's a very short illustrated story, but it talks a lot about the everyday struggles children face in school or with their friends, which has a lot to talk about tradition and culture. So this is about a girl called Yari, who is a Korean, and she lives in the US, and she's been bullied by her classmates because she takes Korean food every day for her lunch, and Korean food sometimes they look different from the usual US foods or English foods or even Indian foods. So initially her classmates, they start bullying her, and she kind of ends up crying to her mom to change all of her meals for lunch at school. So what her mom does is she kind of changes everything, and she tries to tell her the importance of their culture, their food, and the importance of their food also, but Yari denies everything and she starts taking US foods every day. So what happens is, one day the school is conducting an event where you have to showcase your culture, your tradition, and your food. So what happens is, Yari is again nervous, but she dresses in a Korean dress, and also she takes the Korean food. So one teacher kind of finds that food very interesting, and she tastes it and she loves the food, and she goes and tells her experience to the children, and the children are very curious now to taste Yari's lunchbox, and they kind of end up eating her lunchbox, and they find that very tasteful and not yucky or not stinking or not smelly. So what happens is they become friends initially, and Yari is very happy. So the moral of the story is that don't get influenced by the other cultures, the Western cultures we have. Always give importance to your own culture, and never feel guilty or shameful of your own tradition and culture. So I think it conveys a huge message in this small illustrated children book. So I really love this book, and I gave this book 4 out of 5, and I gave this book 3.5 out of 5. So I actually expected more from this book, but the next book which I read is also an e-book, and that is The Mountains Sing by a Vietnamese writer. I'll put the cover page here, and I really enjoyed this experience because it was the first time I'm listening to an audiobook while reading an e-book or a physical copy, and I really want to own a physical copy because I am not a very good history student, and this book taught me a lot about the historical happenings and the things that happened during the Vietnamese War, the land reforms, the Great Hunger. So I think it was very knowledgeable to me, and also a very good historical fiction, and I totally enjoyed this book, and I would highly recommend this book because I gave this book 5 out of 5. So this book is about a Vietnamese family saga story, and they kind of get separated and tattered due to the Vietnamese War. So this is narrated from 2 points of views. One is the grandma, who's Dulan, and one is the granddaughter, who's Hung. So Dulan narrates her story to Hung about the struggles and the aftermath of the Vietnamese War. Being born into a wealthy farmer family, Dulan gets betrayed by the whole village due to the land reform, and she runs away from her ancestor house and with 5 children, and she reaches Hanoi with just 1 children, abandoning 1 child at each village because of safety and hunger. All those parts were very hard to read, and leaving back a child is not a good thing, and you cannot read that parts because I, being a mom, I couldn't read those parts. When we think of the hunger and the safety of the kids, I think what Dulan had done is something good. And what happens is that she reaches Hanoi, she kind of gets a work, and she saves money, and she gets back to every child except the first child of hers, and she kind of builds a future for themselves. But the war keeps happening and everything gets tattered, and every child is sent to face the war. So what happens is she kind of narrates, and she is a good inspiration for Hung, who also for the love of her mother and her father who are in the battlefield. But when her mother comes back, she is traumatized, and she always wants her mother to be talkative like before and caring like before, but her mother doesn't care because of the trauma she faced during the war. So at the end, when they find Dulan's first son, the story ends, and there's a lot of emotional things happening, and I totally loved it because of the similar culture we follow in Vietnam and India, because of the ancestral land they talk about, the land reforms, and how people betray you when you have helped them a lot. I think it happens at every place, but I think cultures like India and Vietnam, they have very similar stories to tell, and I totally liked it, and it was very emotional, very sad at the end. I didn't expect that coming. So I would highly recommend this book if you are a historical fiction freak, and if you really want to start up with an audiobook or an ebook. I think this book was a fantastic read for me on Scribed app. I love the narration. So that's the 3rd book I read in the month of August, and I'm giving it 5 out of 5 stars. The next book which I read was for a book club, and this was not the August book of the month, but this was the July book of the month, but I was not able to complete this book. But I wanted to read this book mainly because of the author of The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. So if you're following me for quite some time now, I think you would know how much I love that book. So this is the latest release by the author, and that's why we picked this book as the book of the month for July. And unfortunately, I didn't like the book. It was very dramatic for me, and also I didn't find the story to be moving, as well as I didn't find what the story wanted to convey. But many of my friends from the book club did like it, and mostly like 90% of them didn't like it because basically they loved the other book. People Rising was a very a very different story, I would say. I never actually expected the ending to be like this. I wanted a lot of mystery to be happening in the story, but it didn't give me so much of a mystery or some intrigue to the story. So this is about Nina Riva, who holds a party every year in her house, and she is a surfer. She is a very famous surfer, and she has 3 more siblings. She is the daughter of a very famous pop singer called Mika Riva, not Mika, sorry, Mick Riva. So if you have read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Mick Riva will be having a character in Evelyn's life. So I think they have some connection. So what happens is Mick Riva and her mother and Nina's mother June, they fall in love when they were youngsters and they get married, and Mick slowly he kind of builds his own musical world and he becomes very famous. And what happens is, as usual in most of the stories, he abandons and he leaves June. So Nina and then Jay and Hood, and last is Kit. So there are 4 children for Mick and Joan, and I totally like the romance between Mick and Joan, the chemistry between them, and also I love the siblings bonding. So what happens is Nina invites a whole lot of famous people from the industry and they have a huge party every year. So what I expected in the story was that I expected that there would be some murder, or there would be some story which would be very intriguing, or there would be some mystery happening in the story which would keep the readers interesting. I really didn't find what the book is about, and I really didn't find what it ended in. So that's my only disappointment in the story. And there were a lot of characters which were very unneeded, and there were a lot of characters which were not needed in the story, and a lot of background information about them and how they became such big stars, and all of those was very, very not needed because they didn't have any connection to the story. So it was a very disappointed story for me, and it talks about how Nina ended up being a surfer and how she had hardships when both of their parents were not there, how she brought up her siblings and how she paid for their school bills and everything. The story was just talking about Nina, but I think maybe the story told about self-love. Maybe that is the moral of the story, I don't know. But I expected more, and I really wanted some mystery to be happening in the story. So I think it's a very disappointed book for me, and I give this book just 2.75 out of 5. So coming up next are books which I read in the month of September, and I think I read a historical fiction, a thriller, a psychological thriller, and again a magical historical fiction kind of a book, and a children's book. So let's start with the first book, which is my favorite, and I would highly recommend it to everyone. So that is Local Girl Missing by Claire Douglas. This is unexpected book for me. Actually, I saw this book in one of the shops and I didn't buy this book, but when I came back home and I researched a lot about this book, I saw great reviews. So I was actually looking for this book in Amazon, Flipkart for second-hand rates, and also I checked with many second-hand sellers, but at the end I got from my friend who is very new to Instagram selling and everything. So I had to exchange one of my old book with her, and I bought this book. It's a very good book, and I'm very grateful that she had this book. So let me come to the story of the book. This is about Sophie and Frankie, who have been friends, and Sophie goes missing suddenly on one night, and they don't know what happened to her or anything about her whereabouts. So what happens is, after 18 years, Frankie receives a call from Daniel, who's Sophie's brother, that he has received some remains of Sophie. So she kind of goes to her hometown, which is Old Cliff, and she wants to help Daniel find the killer, or what happened to Sophie. She wants to know what happens to Sophie. So the friendship story and the flashbacks. So when Frankie goes to her hometown, she has a lot of secrets, and there's a lot of creepy things happening to her. She feels paranoid, and she feels that somebody is following her, and somebody wants to tell her that something is going to happen wrong, and a lot of creepy things happen at the place where she stays, and that place overlooks to the old pyre where Sophie goes missing. So I had a blast reading this book. It was a fast page-turning book, and I didn't expect the secrets that Sophie and Frankie shared, and also the secrets between Sophie's brother Daniel and Frankie. So there was a lot of dark secrets, as well as a lot of intriguing events happening throughout the book. So I gave this book 5 out of 5, and I totally recommend it to anyone starting with a thriller. The second book which I read in the month of September is The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. So this was one of the book club's book of the month pick for August, and I ended up reading this book in the first week of September, and I am proud that I am the only person who finished reading the book at least in September, because many didn't start and many didn't actually pick the book. So I'm very, very proud of that. But coming to the book, it's a fantastic book, and this is automatically added to my 21 favorites of my 2021 book list, I think. It's a huge book, and I've been procrastinating reading this book because of the size. It's 584 pages with a lot of love and a lot of emotional things happening. The very interesting thing about the book is that it is narrated from the point of view of death. So this is about a story of a young girl called Leslie, who's been given to foster parents living in Germany by her mother. While on the way to Germany, she loses her brother because of the cold, and she starts to steal books right from there. So she starts to steal a book left by the gravedigger, and she starts to like the experience of stealing the book and feeling them, reading them, holding them, and just smelling them. I think every book lover's secret is all the things that Leslie happens to do in this book. And also there's a lot of emotional bonding happens to every character in this book. So what happens is Leslie goes to her foster parents, and initially she doesn't like them, but the foster father is very, very close to Leslie, and whenever she wakes up from her nightmare, he stays with her and he reads books to her. So the bond they share is very, very good, and I totally loved it. And they love being at the basement of Hans Hammerman's house, that is Leslie's foster father. And the bond between Leslie and Rudy, who is Leslie's friend in the same street, is very, very cute, and they love each other. They love the company of each other, and I totally like that. And when I came to know that Rudy will die in the end, I was heartbroken. And the kiss which he keeps asking Leslie was just unfulfilled, and it gave me goosebumps at the end when I knew that he died. So it was a very hard book to read, but I couldn't stop reading the book. And the bond between Leslie and Max is a Jew who comes to stay in the basement of the Humberman residence because he's been threatened, and Humberman has a deed to fulfill, and he gives space to the Jew. So what happens to the family, and what happens when war hits their house, is all the story is about. And the end was so emotional. It was very hard hitting, but I loved the book thoroughly. I would highly recommend this book, and I wouldn't recommend this book to a beginner because I don't know if you like it, but yeah, I would highly recommend this book to any intermediate historical fiction lover. It does has a lot of war things happening, but it has a lot of love, relationship, bonding, etc., affection, whatever it is. I love the book totally. So I give this book 5 out of 5. The next book which I read in the month of September is also a children's book, and that's by Ruskin Bond, and that is Ranji's Wonderful Paths and Other Stories. So this is a collection of short stories about children happening to play cricket and everything. I really like the book. I wouldn't talk a lot about the book because it's a very short book, and also it has very simple stories. So I think it will be great if you just dive into the book without knowing the story of the book. So I gave the book 4 out of 5. The next book which I read in the month of September is this one, which is my first Kristen Hanna book, and I totally loved it. That is Waiting for the Moon by Kristen Hanna. So this is about a girl called Selena who attempts suicide, and she's been rescued by a fisherman, and she comes to an asylum kind of house, and Dr. Ian Carrick takes care of her. So later what happens is they develop a love between each other, and the story just goes on. And once when every memory of Selena hits back, the story kind of takes the twist. So it was a very good book, but I expected more, and it has a lot of magical things, a lot of lyrical writing in the book. I totally loved the book because of the writing, and I would highly recommend this book to anyone starting with Kristen Hanna. And I would give this book 3.75 out of 5, or even 4 for the book. It's not very bad. It does have a lot of romance into it, love and everything into it, but yeah, it's 3.75 to 4 out of 5. So those are all the books which I read in the month of September and August. I hope you like this video. It's about 8 books which I read in both the months. The count is little less when I compare this video to June and July wrap up. But I think I read around 2 huge historical fiction books, 2 thrillers, and some fantastic children books as well. So I think it keeps me content and happy with my reading pace. So that's all for all this wrap up. I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Always post your comments and thoughts on my comment section below, and I'll be happy to discuss with that with you guys. Bye bye and take care.